Okay, so get ready for a deep dive, and you might not expect this one. We're diving into Psalm 23.
Psalm 23. Okay.
I know you're probably thinking Tuesday morning, and we're already talking about Psalm 23. A little heavy, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you guys requested this one. You wanted to go deeper than just the Sunday school version.
Right.
And let me tell you, this psalm is practically a celebrity.
It's true. It really is. Yeah. You find Psalm 23 everywhere. I mean, you find it everywhere from like the deck of the Titanic to like Coolio's Gangsta's Paradise. Like, how does something thousands of years old still resonate? That's what we're here to unpack.
Right. It's like the psalm has a direct line to something deep within us. No matter where or when we are.
Right.
So we've got stacks of research, literary analyses, even like some cultural commentary, because this thing pops up everywhere.
Right.
All prepped and ready.
Yeah.
So our mission, to figure out why these words are so enduring, why they're so universal. Yeah. Like it's like the ultimate comfort song.
Right, exactly. And we have to address the elephant in the room, or should I say, the shepherd in the room.
Okay.
Who wrote this thing?
Okay, hit me with it.
Yeah.
Who is the mysterious wordsmith behind Psalm 23?
So traditionally, it's attributed to King David.
Okay.
You know, shepherd turned king.
Oh, right.
Giant slayer, harp enthusiast. That David.
Of course.
It's a pretty fitting resume for someone who would write a psalm about a shepherd.
Right. Like he's drawing from personal experience.
Yeah.
Been there, shepherded that, wrote the psalm.
Right. Exactly.
But I'm hearing whispers that some folks aren't convinced David actually wrote it.
You heard right.
Okay.
There are some scholars who believe it originated much, much later during the Babylonian exile.
Okay.
Now, this was a time of intense upheaval for the Israelites.
Right.
Imagine being forced from your homeland, like everything familiar just ripped away. Scholars suggest that Psalm 23 may reflect the collective longing for comfort and guidance during that really, really dark period.
So instead of one shepherd's reflections, it's more like a whole people's cry for hope.
Exactly.
In a time of crisis.
Exactly. And that raises such a fascinating point.
Okay.
Which is that Psalm 23's power doesn't actually depend on a single author.
Okay.
It speaks to a universal human need, this yearning for something to cling to when life feels chaotic.
Right.
And that's, I think,
okay, I'm hooked.
That's really, I'm hooked.
That's really fascinating, yeah.
So regardless of who wrote it, let's dive into the words themselves, because, I mean, those opening lines are iconic.
Yeah.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. It's so simple.
Yeah.
But it's so, so profound.
It is.
What's your take on that?
I think it's brilliant in its simplicity.
Yep.
You know, you're right off the bat, we're placed in this very intimate relationship with a protector, a guide.
Yeah.
Not just any guide, a shepherd. And not just any shepherd, but the shepherd.
Exactly.
Like you can practically hear the capital S when you read it.
You got it. This isn't some like distant, indifferent deity.
Right.
This is a God who knows our needs intimately and who will guide and protect, you know, with a gentle hand.
Okay, I get that. But then there's that line, I shall not want.
Yeah.
That's a bold statement.
It is bold.
Like, is it really saying that all my needs will be met no matter what?
Well, and that's why it's so crucial to actually look at how different translations handle that.
Okay.
You know, because the King James Version, known for its very, like, poetic style, uses that very phrase, I shall not want. It feels very much like a declaration of faith, almost a promise.
Like, because I have the shepherd, I'm covered, end of story.
Exactly. But then you have something like the New International Version, which translates it as, I lack nothing.
Okay.
It's a little subtler, right?
Yeah.
It's more about assurance, I think, than it is about absolute lack.
So it's not necessarily saying, like, we'll never have needs, but that we can, like, trust that those needs will be met in the way that serves us.
You got it.
Okay.
And that's why understanding nuance in language is so important.
Right.
Even a slight shift in wording can dramatically change how we interpret a text.
Which brings us to, I think, that next line, right?
Yes.
He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters.
Ah, yes.
Talk about peaceful imagery.
It's idyllic.
But I'm guessing there's more to it than just like a relaxing day in the countryside.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, on the surface, it is idyllic.
Right.
Green pastures, they just evoke abundance, rest, still waters, you know, suggesting tranquility, peace.
Right.
It's tapping into, I think, that like our very human need for these moments of calm in the midst of chaos.
And in today's world, who couldn't use a little bit more of that?
Right, exactly.
But I'm sensing you're about to drop some, like, knowledge bombs here. There's a but coming, isn't there?
There might be.
Okay.
There might be, yeah.
So tell me more.
So those green pastures and still waters, they represent more than just our physical needs. They speak to a deeper kind of nourishment, a spiritual nourishment.
So it's about more than just having food and water.
Right.
It's about our souls being taken care of as well.
Exactly. That deep sense of peace, contentment that comes from knowing you're guided and protected.
Yeah.
You know that you're not alone
in
facing whatever life throws your way.
But then it gets even more interesting, right? Because that very next line mentions restoring the soul. So is that different from simply being led beside still waters?
That's a great question.
And what does restoration even mean in this context?
Yeah, and you're right to point out, like, the distinction, right?
Yeah.
He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. This isn't just about, like, temporary peace or, fleeting comfort.
Right.
This is about being made whole again.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's less about relaxation
and
it's more about, like, healing and transformation.
Yeah.
Like, something has been broken and the shepherd is actively working to put the pieces back together.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
It suggests that we are not meant to stay broken.
Right.
The shepherd is committed to mending us, to renewing us.
And it's for his name's sake. Like, that little detail always stood out to me. It's like God's reputation is on the line, It's an
interesting way to look at it. It highlights how God's actions, how he cares for his flock, are a reflection of his character.
Yeah.
Even when we feel lost, even when we feel broken, we are loved, we are valued.
Okay, before we get to the valley of the shadow of death, because we have to unpack that one.
We do.
I'm curious, since we're talking about, like, the Hebrew origins of this text, are there any words or phrases in those first few verses that hit differently when you understand, like, the original language?
Yes, absolutely.
Give us the inside scoop.
Let's talk about that word, shepherd. So the Hebrew word is ra.
Okay.
And it's not just like some guy who casually watches sheep,
Right.
It implies this, like, deep responsibility for the flock's well-being.
Yeah.
Think of it less like a hired hand.
Okay.
And more like a protector, someone who's deeply personally invested in the fate of each sheep.
Okay.
It completely changes the dynamic, doesn't it?
Wow, that's a much stronger image than what I had in mind.
Right.
So it's not just a distant overseer.
Right.
It's someone who's really in the thick of it with the sheep.
Precisely. And it transforms, I think, how we understand this relationship.
Yeah.
This isn't a distant deity keeping tabs from afar.
Right.
This is a God who's down in the trenches with us, guiding us, protecting us,
right,
willing to go to great lengths for our well-being.
Okay, I'm seeing this whole shepherd thing in a whole new light, which I guess brings us to the line that everyone remembers, even if they don't know where it's from. Yeah, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me.
Yeah.
Whoa. Even saying it out loud is, like, powerful. But I have to admit, this verse has always felt, like, a little heavy to me.
Yeah.
Is it meant to be taken literally?
One of the most well-known and perhaps misunderstood lines in the entire psalm.
Okay.
And you're right.
Yeah.
It does allude to mortality, to facing death.
Right.
But it's not limited to that kind of literal interpretation.
Okay.
And remember how we were talking about the different translations?
Right. Right.
Some translations render this as the darkest valley.
Okay.
Which broadens the meaning a bit to encompass any experience of, like, profound fear,
okay,
uncertainty, suffering.
So it's less about physically dying and more about just those, like, inevitable dark times that we all face.
Exactly. Those moments when we feel just lost and afraid and unsure of which way to turn.
Yeah. Yeah. But what's so powerful about this verse and I think about Psalm 23 in general is that it acknowledges that darkness. Like, it doesn't shy away from it.
Right.
But it doesn't leave us stranded there either.
Right.
It's that "for you are with me" part that, like, changes everything.
Yes. It's that unwavering reassurance that even in those dark valleys, we're not alone.
Yeah.
The shepherd is right there beside us.
Right.
Offering guidance, comfort.
Yeah.
Your rod and your staff, they comfort me.
I always pictured the rod and staff as like weapons, like the shepherd's going to use them to fight off danger. Am I way off base there?
No, that's certainly one way to interpret it. And it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
It speaks to that that feeling of security that the shepherd provides.
Right.
But some scholars suggest that the rod and staff were also used very practically for like guiding the sheep.
Okay.
Gently nudging them in the right direction.
Oh, okay. So it's not just protection from like outside forces, but also about like being gently steered on the right path, even when we can't see clearly.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
Now, before we leave this valley, I'm curious, is there anything, again, in the original Hebrew that adds another dimension to how we understand this verse?
There is. The Hebrew phrase that's often translated as shadow of death, it's selmavet.
Okay.
And it doesn't necessarily mean like being completely consumed by death.
Okay.
It can also mean deep shadow.
Okay.
So even in that darkness, there's this sense of being like enveloped, surrounded, rather than being utterly overwhelmed.
So it's less about being destroyed by the darkness and more about moving through it, knowing that the shepherd is there to light the way.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's this powerful reminder that even in those moments when we feel most alone, we are held and we are guided.
Yeah.
There's always a light, even when we can't see it for ourselves.
Okay. Everyone listening, take a deep breath. That was a lot. But it's incredible how much like depth and nuance is packed into just a few lines.
Yeah, amazing.
What I find so fascinating about Psalm 23 is that it's not just some like ancient religious text gathering dust on a shelf somewhere.
Right.
It is woven into the fabric of our culture.
It is.
We touched on it earlier, but like how else has this infiltrated pop culture?
Oh, it's practically a cultural chameleon. I mean, you mentioned the Titanic.
Yeah.
You know, as the ship was going down, passengers gathered on deck and they recited Psalm 23.
Wow.
Talk about a powerful moment. Like it really highlights the Psalm's ability to provide this sense of hope, this sense of solace, even in the face of, unimaginable tragedy.
I get chills just thinking about it. Like in those moments when everything feels like it's falling apart around you, to have those words to cling to.
Absolutely. And it's not just in those like life or death situations either.
Right.
Remember Coolio's Gangsta's Paradise? Mm-hmm. He samples Stevie Wonder's Pastime Paradise, but then he kind of flips the script, right?
Right.
He uses that Valley of the Shadow of Death imagery to reflect the realities of, gang violence, poverty.
Right.
Like it's raw, it's gritty.
Yeah.
But it speaks volumes, I think, about the Psalm's ability to transcend cultural boundaries and experiential boundaries.
Yeah, it's like it becomes this shared language, this way to talk about struggle and hope in like the darkest of places.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just music either, right?
No.
Literature is full of echoes of Psalm 23.
Absolutely.
Like Dylan Thomas's "Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night" immediately comes to mind for me.
Yes.
That like fierce resistance to death.
Yes.
It's got that same energy, I think, as Psalm 23.
Absolutely. Thomas's poem is all about raging against the dying of the light, fighting for life and meaning, even when death feels so imminent.
Right.
And it's not a direct quote from Psalm 23.
Right.
But the themes, I think, of facing mortality with courage, with dignity, are impossible to ignore.
Right. And literature is just full of these subtle nods, these echoes, I think, of Psalm 23's just enduring power.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It is.
Movies, music, literature, it's like everywhere.
It's everywhere, yeah.
What do you think it is about this psalm that makes it so adaptable?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why this psalm and why now?
Right.
And I think it speaks to something that's so deeply ingrained in us, this like universal need for comfort, for guidance, for hope.
Yeah.
Especially when life throws these curveballs at us.
Right.
And the imagery is so timeless.
Yeah.
You have the shepherd, the valley, the feast. I mean, these images just tap into something so primal, something that goes beyond just culture and time.
Yeah, it's like there are these shortcuts to these universal human experiences that make it relatable no matter who you are, where you come from.
It's true.
Now, we've mostly been focusing on Psalm 23 in the context of Christianity, but we know it's got roots in Judaism as well.
So how does it fit into that tradition?
That's such an essential point, I think.
Yeah.
Because Psalm 23 predates Christianity.
Right.
And in Judaism, God as shepherd is this recurring motif throughout the entire Hebrew Bible.
Okay.
Moses is often depicted as a shepherd leading his people.
Mm-hmm.
Many of the prophets, like Ezekiel, for example, use that same imagery to describe God's relationship with Israel.
So the idea of God as this protector and guide, it's not just like a cool poetic device. It's
Right.
it's deeply embedded in this tradition.
Absolutely. And what's remarkable is how that imagery extends even further.
Okay.
I mean, even in Islam, one of the names for Allah is Al-Hadi,
Okay.
which means the guide.
Wow.
And the Quran depicts Allah guiding believers through life, just as a shepherd guides their flock.
So even though these are distinct faiths, they all use that same image, that same shepherd image, to convey that sense of comfort, of protection, of guidance.
Exactly.
It really highlights how like universal that human need is.
Exactly. It reminds us that beyond our differences, we share this very profound desire, I think, for something greater than ourselves.
Right.
Something to light our way through the darkness.
It's humbling, isn't it? Okay, before we wrap up our deep dive into Psalm 23, I'm curious, were there any lesser known facts or interpretations that really surprised you in your research? Like something our listeners can pull out at their next trivia night?
Oh, I found some real gems. Yeah. For one, did you know that what we call Psalm 23 wasn't always numbered that way?
Really?
In the Septuagint, which is an early translation of the Hebrew Bible into Greek, it's actually Psalm 22.
Wait, so at some point the numbers got shuffled?
Exactly.
Like a playlist on shuffle.
Exactly. It's just a different numbering system, but it makes you think about, how these texts have been interpreted and reinterpreted through time.
Right. Yeah.
And get this, early Christian monks,
Okay.
they used to recite Psalm 23 multiple times every single day.
Wow, they were really into it.
Yeah.
What was the thinking behind that? Like, why so much repetition?
So they saw it as a grounding force,
Okay.
like a spiritual reset button.
Right.
Especially during those moments of doubt or fear, those words would bring them strength, comfort.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the impact of chanting those words of peace and reassurance throughout your entire day?
Right. Almost like a meditative practice.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, give me another one. What else did you unearth in your research?
Well, this one really struck me. In some Eastern Orthodox traditions, Psalm 23 is a key part of funeral rites.
Okay.
But it's not just about mourning death. It's about the soul's journey toward peace.
Okay.
And how the shepherd guides them on that journey.
So it's less about the finality of death and more about the continuation of the soul's path.
Exactly.
Guided by that comforting presence.
Exactly. And it reframes grief and loss within, I think, this larger spiritual context.
Right.
And here's one last fact that I found incredibly moving. Throughout history, Psalm 23 has been used by various resistance movements and marginalized communities as a source of strength and hope.
Yeah.
And when you think about, the oppression and the struggle that they faced, those words must have taken on this whole other level of meaning.
It's amazing how those words that, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, can transcend time, place, even circumstance to provide that comfort, that courage.
It's a testament to, I think, the enduring power of those words.
Yeah.
Psalm 23 reminds us that no matter what darkness we face, we are not alone.
It's been an incredible journey unpacking Psalm 23 with you today.
Yeah, it has.
We've covered so much ground, from the ancient world to pop culture, different interpretations, different faiths.
Yeah.
What's the biggest takeaway that you hope our listeners walk away with?
I think, for me, it's that even though Psalm 23 has been around for centuries, its message still resonates so deeply in our modern lives. No matter, our backgrounds, our beliefs, whether we find solace in the image of the shepherd, or we find strength in the face of fear, or simply a moment of peace in the chaos.
Right.
Psalm 23 offers something for everyone.
It does.
We're not alone.
Yeah.
There's always a light.
There is.
Even in the darkest of hours.
Beautifully said. And what I find so powerful about Psalm 23 is that it's not just a text to be studied or analyzed, It's an invitation, really, to connect with something larger than ourselves.
Yeah.
To find meaning and purpose in our own lives, however we define those things.
It's true.
So listeners, we want to hear from you.
Yeah.
What does Psalm 23 mean to you? How has it shown up in your own life? Share your thoughts with us on social media. Leave us a comment. We would love to keep this conversation going.
Until then, keep exploring.
Yeah.
Keep asking those big questions. And keep seeking out those sources of comfort, those sources of inspiration.
Yes.
That really speak to your soul.
And remember, you don't have to walk through those valleys alone.
That's right.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Psalm 23.